Previously on David Ilie.
I'm gonna host everything at home. Have I installed Kubernetes on my server? No. Have I set up Ingress? No. Have I moved all the microservices? No.
1 year ago, I published my first ever video to this YouTube channel regarding what I like to call my infrastructure. Looking at this video 1 year later makes me cringe at all the information that I got wrong. But I don't blame him. He didn't know everything that I don't now, didn't know the complications that would arise, but the biggest of them all, he didn't know his own potential.
Before this video starts, I want to quickly tell you about Ostaz. Ostaz is an online tutoring company with experienced tutors from all around the world, each teaching a wide variety of subjects. As a student myself, a platform like Ostaz can be very useful for upcoming exams, revision, or just learning about something that you missed in school. Currently, they have a really interesting English course going on conducted by King's Training, which is going on over the summer, which you can sign up using my link below. Also, using my link below, you will get a $10 discount on your first purchase and also support me in the process. Now on to the video. When I ended off my last video, I emphasized that I want to move everything from DigitalOcean to my home server. It might sound like a basic idea, but I made it clear that I didn't know how to properly spin up a bare metal Kubernetes instance. Bare metal Kubernetes is different to the standard Kubernetes that you would get with a cloud provider. One of the main problems that was present was the fact that you couldn't assign a load balancer without an external service, but I will get to the solution later in the video. I guess you can tell that I spent a lot of time working on this video, and in fact, I would have made this video a lot sooner. There is actually a picture of me making this video a lot sooner. But the fact is, I discovered yet another feature of how to improve my infrastructure, which is what delayed me for so long. But what do I mean by new features? Well, for starters, a person could find a new feature every single day to a setup like this, as there are countless open source projects that benefit someone's infrastructure. In my case, a new feature is something that I find useful to the overall lifespan of my cluster. For the past couple of months, I have done lots of research in different distributions of Kubernetes, different orchestrators for Kubernetes, and so on, which is what I want to talk about next, my different variations of Kubernetes installs. I've had a lot of different variations of Kubernetes installs, and let's start with the very first one. It's exactly the same one like I mentioned on my last video, however it's hosted at home. Some people might call this a win, and I'm amazed myself that I managed to get it working, but it's bulky. K8s, or the normal Kubernetes, is not made to be hosted at home. There's a lot of manual stuff that you need to do, which cloud providers do by default, and it's really annoying to set up. But then disaster struck. As you can tell, I had to move house. And because I moved house, that means another month-long process of getting internet working. So, I mean, I had the choice. I could have kept everything down for a month while I got everything working, or go back to DigitalOcean. And which one do you think I picked?
By having everything running back at DigitalOcean, I had the opportunity to research how to get a better cluster running, as K8s was just not cutting it for me. While this was going on, I also got my internet working, so I had to move everything back home to the same virtual machine that I was running before.
That process didn't really take that long to set up, and I was glad that I stopped paying that cloud subscription fee to DigitalOcean, and it was running perfectly. For the most part.
Thankfully, I discovered K3s and Rancher. K3s is a lightweight distribution of Kubernetes which can be installed from just one command, or it can be installed via Rancher's Docker run command. I was extremely interested in getting it working on my server and spent the longest time trying to get it working, but to no avail.
However, once I found the culprit of my problems, which was this SSD in my server, I decided to invest into a more safe disk setup, which is 4 500GB SSDs in a RAID 5. This brings me a lot of reliability if one of my disk fails, and also a lot of speed too. Once I got Rancher installed, everything worked like a breeze, and the GUI helped easily migrating all my services over to this new setup.
I also decided to go with Traefik instead of NGINX Ingress, as even though both of them are almost the same, Traefik is partnered with Rancher and has better support with K3s, in my opinion. And also its dashboard looks amazing.
After I got Rancher installed, my next focus was security, which is where I discovered Cloudflare. Cloudflare is essentially the easy way to proxy everything. In its free plan, it proxies HTTP traffic, which is exactly what I need. And now when you access my website, it has a Cloudflare SSL certificate, and it also hides my IP address to some random IP address in the United States, which doesn't even correlate to my own. This setup worked perfectly from around October to January, where then I was annoyed how long it would take for the cluster to recover after a power outage. Furthermore, I wanted to expand my Kubernetes cluster to use more than one virtual machine and have those virtual machines split across multiple hypervisor nodes, so then I can achieve a more stable setup, because that is the way it is recommended on the Rancher docs and almost anywhere you try and look.
For the longest time, I have only been using Citrus, my main virtualization server, but I also wanted to use other hardware around the house to make sure my infrastructure is working for the longest time. So that is when I introduced Plasma, an old gaming laptop, into the mix.
So that is when I built my third cluster. My third cluster was running virtual machines across all my virtual hypervisors and was somewhat highly available. However, till a certain extent. That's because it was using an external database. So that means if the server with the external database dies, the entire cluster will be unresponsive because it wouldn't have a database. So that means it wasn't to my expectations, so I had to find another solution.
Before we continue, let's take a look at my servers. Currently, there are 2 servers and a laptop composing of my home cluster. To start off, we have Citrus. Citrus is an HP DL360E Gen 8 server with 2 E5-2470 V2 processors and 128 GB of RAM. For storage, it has a RAID 5 array of 1.5 terabytes. Moving on to Nucleus.
Welcome everyone to a journey into the Nucleus.
I hope this sucks.
Nucleus is a Dell R730 with 2 E5-2630 V4 processors and 224 GB of DDR4 ECC RAM. For storage, it has the same setup as Citrus. Finally, we have Plasma. Plasma is a Xiaomi gaming laptop with an i7-8750H, 16 GB of RAM, and a 500 GB SSD.
I actually bought Nucleus relatively recently so that then I can have some more hardware so then I can lay back all my intensive workloads from Citrus to Nucleus. However, Nucleus is sitting right next to me. He's on the other side of my desk. He's not really that loud, he's way more quieter than my server, but I plan to move all my servers into a proper rack that I have unbuilt outside my house, and then also into a server room where they can be properly cooled, instead of making my room like 50 degrees Celsius. Now that I have 3 nodes in my Kubernetes cluster and also my Proxmox cluster, and yes, I run Proxmox as a hypervisor, I can have something called Quorum, which is essentially a way of voting to make sure all my services are evenly distributed among all my nodes. So now, I have my servers, and they're perfectly functioning in the Proxmox cluster. Now came in developing the actual proper Kubernetes cluster, which is where version 4 comes in. Version 4 is a little different compared to my other nodes. It's composed of 9 virtual machines, and I have 3 masters, 3 workers, and 3 data nodes. The data nodes are a way to replicate all my data that is staying within all my deployments to make sure that if one of my servers go down, I do not lose my data. I'm also using K3s and Rancher and Traefik to like all my other ones, but instead of using an external database like I use MySQL, I'm using etcd, which is a type of database that sits on every single master node and is replicated across all of them, meaning that if, let's say, Nucleus goes down, so that's master 1, it will fall back to master 2 and all my services will recover in less than 2 minutes. So finally, after 1 year, I finally have a Kubernetes cluster that I can use for the coming years. Unless something changes in the future, this is the cluster that will be running in my home for a while.
If you're interested in setting up something like this yourself, make sure to check out the GitHub repository, which contains detailed documentation as to how you can do this on your own. Make sure to store it as well.
Now, we can finally move on to the next chapter, which is Website Showcase. Now we've reached a more relaxed stage of this video. No more scripted voiceovers, it's just me talking exactly like that video 1 year ago. Last time you saw my website, it was extremely basic. Even though I was using Next.js, I wasn't really using all of its functions and I was just using it to statically display my code, which is very basic, and Next.js has a bunch of cool features that I've been using for the past year, and right now, I think I've reached a stage where I can finally show you my website. So if we just go to my website here, we have a brand new page, a brand new background, and a brand new welcome animation, which is pretty nice. Once we scroll down, there are a bunch of animations everywhere, and in my opinion, it looks way better. Instead of writing all the CSS myself, I decided to use a framework called Tailwind CSS, and the framework is truly excellent. It lets me focus on other parts of my website and have CSS just be like a basic thing. My website now also has a blog. I used to run a blog separately called The David Ones, but I decided to try and code my own blog using MDX, which essentially converts a markdown file into React code, and I can also use React components. The blog is pretty nice. I also integrated authentication. So let's say I sign in with my Google account. Once I am signed in, I have this nice comment page, which I can just do hello there. This is a very nice post. As you can see, I've tested this before. And I submit the comment and there it is. And then you can also delete the post and that's it. My website also has a bunch of new things updated in the server side. So if we head over to Rancher, which is like I mentioned before, my orchestrator, back then in my old video, I used to run something called Spring as my background services API and also MailMe, and that's it. If you look at my list here, there's a bunch of new services. So we have Agenda, which is essentially Spring but written in JavaScript because I prefer JavaScript as opposed to Java. We have Identity. If we head over to my website, it actually has an API login page, which if I sign in, as you can see, I signed in, I can access the dashboard to Agenda and I can see all my background services and moderate them. Like for instance, this one, it shows me my statistics. Then we have MongoDB. I switched from MySQL to MongoDB as it's way better in my opinion for asynchronous workloads. We also have the Spotify API, which essentially gives data to this page, which is the music page. Just shows what I'm listening to, you know. And also while we're here, this is my projects page. It has been completely revamped compared to my other one, and in my opinion, it looks better. Comparing this to my old website, you can tell that I've put a lot of work into learning about frameworks, Next.js, CSS, and everything. And as you saw before, this was deployed on my Kubernetes cluster. But how do I deploy a new change? So I use something called GitHub Actions. So when I push my code to GitHub, GitHub runs a VPS for me for free, thank you GitHub, which builds my code, makes it into a Docker image, and then tells Kubernetes to re-download my Docker image. All in all, my website has evolved, my platform has evolved, everything has evolved. Even though I haven't uploaded in 1 year, and I don't think you guys trust me that I'm saying that I'm gonna upload new videos soon, I actually am. I have a lot of plans to make videos like guides, but then there will be more laid down videos, for example, just how to code something, or just a showcase of what I've been doing. And if you have any other suggestions of what I should try and make, feel free to write them in the comments. Also, thank you so much for the support from the last video. So yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you guys for watching, comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.